Tags.
You all have to send it over to people on the right.
Yeah, that's fine.
Which one?
I guess the one on the right.
Visitors registration.
We've all signed into security as well. Yeah, I know. I'm just letting you know we signed into security.
It'll be here this afternoon, it looks like. What is it? Accenture, Deloitte, JLL, Compass.
Oh, it's quite a few.
Yeah.
But they were here as of last month. Which is interesting. Oral presentation.
How many members are here?
Oh, wow.
They were here yesterday?
No, they were here in June. What time is it? Is this where the oral presentations are taking place, or are they elsewhere?
Oral presentations are not public.
Is this where they're taking place, or are they elsewhere?
I have no idea what they do, but they're not public. When he asked me yesterday, I thought I was talking about bids. Bids used to be public, but they don't even do that anymore.
Oh, no, they don't.
Somebody will come up here and talk to you.
Yeah, we'd like to talk to somebody who can tell us.
It's 9:30.
Mr. Chairman's office, how may I help you? I can bring some more chairs out if you want chairs.
You're awful kind. We're
Thank you.
Thank you.
thank you. We're okay. Thank you.
Happy birthday, Scarlett.
We can still do that.
We can totally do that.
What is it, 39?
Well, 29, but it's not for another several months.
I just turned 29, as a matter of fact. I
My
know.
birthday's in May, but it looks like a group is Jeffy.
Well, we could sing happy birthday to you.
My mom said I'll be 29 for the next 15 years.
My dad did that for you.
Yeah, I know.
My mother-in-law,
Lots of
my
folks.
birthday's 29.
The enclave.
The Enclave.
Pull some chairs out of there for you guys.
We're okay. We're okay. Thank you.
Are you sure?
Yeah.
We're good. Thank you so very much. Conference.
It's a conference within a conference.
We're signing real names.
Another piece of gum, do you?
Sure do. I've got gum for everyone if you want it. Shouldn't he?
Yeah. Thanks.
Gum, anyone?
I got some.
Sure.
Okay.
I'm fine, thank you.
Would you like some gum?
Did you?
Some gum. Thanks.
I can't chew it. You spit it out and then swallow that. It's so good. sign. Haven't signed them yet.
Oh, don't drink out of that.
I was gonna have to wash my hair.
They're taking them out, and I think this one's the last two left, but I won't let anybody drink it. I mean, you can't.
I don't think so.
You can at your own risk.
I didn't get any calls. We were
do
the
it at your own
contacts,
risk.
you and I.
Yeah.
But one day I put it in this brown food people look kind of yellowish, they say it's just that.
No, it's no good.
I think we can stay out. So where'd you guys all travel from?
Memphis.
Memphis? Knoxville?
I'm in Nashville. Murfreesboro.
Murfreesboro.
Jackson.
Okay.
Jackson.
Representatives who know about this coming in.
Right.
Because when I told Barry, she goes, no, you're talking about this. I'm like, that's all I know. So, but some people who do know are coming in.
Okay.
You just know this one.
Do you know who they're sending?
No, I'm sorry.
It's okay.
Mm.
Sure you don't want me to get some cheers? No, I'm fine. And there's one right over here.
There's a
One right here.
couple
I'm fine. Trying to grow.
We've all been sitting for quite a while.
So what does the buffalo say to his son when he's going off to college?
Oh yeah, my mom is so close to it too. It's like, what's another word for a buffalo?
I love it, I know. Did you guys see the cow walking around? You know there's the Chick-fil-A and the Starbucks down there? So Chick-fil-A has this huge cow walking around today.
Oh.
And so some girl saw it and he was out to walk around. She goes, if they don't hurry and get that guy in there, we're going to have patio. Because he's in this big old, I guess, yeah. His head, everything is like in there. Maybe they're paying him good money. They don't pay him good money.
Did your son start in college this year? He's 17, right?
One.
When? Where's he starting at?
Actually, Friday he moves to Washington State.
No way. What's wrong with Tennessee?
Nice, right? So we hit this family. We knew each other since our kids were babies, and they grew up until they were 11 or 12, and he was military. They got transferred out there.
Right.
And then another friend of his, last year, their family moved up there. So now there's two best friends, and another one he met through them. So they're all going to go up there, rent the house together, 4 guys, and go to
Nice.
college. They'll all be going to different colleges, but they'll be together.
Where in Washington?
Washington State.
But what city? What part? Near the coast or Seattle?
Seattle.
Seattle. No.
So my daughter got married in Italy.
I like this.
She spent like 5 months there. So we just had a reception Sunday. This Friday, my one was
Funny that Michael Doug said he's not gonna release any more shoes
Friday, my
until
other son
black,
was back to
till
Florida.
people come
and we just had
together.
one child.
Wow. What do they leave it out?
It's gonna be really a blunder.
We're done.
No more shoes. His name on it.
He's donating $2 million to the community,
Yeah.
to 2 different communities.
Mm-hmm.
$1 million each.
No, but the flooding wasn't nice. Did they video? Yes, well, they didn't video, but I got tons of pictures, tons and tons. And then we had the reception Sunday, so that was I was trying to talk my grandson who's going to Washington to stay home just for 1 more year, and my oldest son said, Mom, if he does that, you'll tour it once next year. So
Right.
I'm letting him go.
Just have
What I raised
all of
him
us
for.
say the same thing one after the other.
Stay long. I don't want that, and all,
I was
I'm very close with them, they're all very close with each other, but none of them want to stay home, but it's not because I can't want to like.
I am so and so.
That is a
It's a really good thing, and I'm not sure who I'll follow. I'll be visiting them all the time.
I'm a taxpayer, I'm a voter, I deserve to be
For 1 month.
involved in this
Give me
process.
that one. You stood this one a year.
There you go. 1 month, that's like 18 years.
Uh-huh.
Well, it'd be fine.
Mhm.
Figure next, I'm sorry. Mr. Kavaka?
Yeah.
These people are with,
We've talked about protecting employees. That's at the highest level. We use a steering committee that includes TBR, UT, government entities, and they are always updated on this information. They are also concerned. So everybody's wanting to answer questions and to move this forward. And so the only way through that is to follow the process.
Right, and I guess I personally have a problem, and others here should say so, that these oral presentations, that there's literally no possibility for anyone else to even just sit in to listen and observe.
That's routine with the
Mhm.
procurement.
I understand that.
Here's why. You know, if you got IBM and let's say Hewlett Packard competing for, let's say it's a mainframe contract, they don't want their competitors sitting in the room listening to what they present and how they're going to handle a solution for the state.
Sure, and
Because they want
none of us are
competitive advantage.
competitors,
Somebody
right?
wanna go first.
We're taxpayers, we're voters, and we're affected people.
That's right. In under representative forms of government, you elect your officials. Your officials
right.
then establish executive branch agencies who then carry out the government for the executive branch. That's how it works.
I understand that, sir, but I mean, we have a lot of jobs on the line right
That's
now.
right.
I
A
understand
lot of
that.
people worried, a lot of people that if they were to lose their state job would probably be costing the taxpayers money more by having to go on welfare and food stamps and such. And it really honestly doesn't seem too transparent to me. I understand I've voted for officials that I'm going to put my trust in to be able to take care of this, but it doesn't appear many of the legislators that had a say-so in this. And we're not hearing what's really going on, and this thing keeps getting sped up where it's efficient for you, but it puts fear in us.
We've been very clear though that employees would be protected and that not anybody would lose
Well,
their
that's the
job as a
first
result.
contract, right? What happens with the next one?
And there are benefits that fundamentally would go away, right? Folks have public service loan forgiveness. Any company that they work for,
That's
that
right.
is a benefit that's just gone. They don't have access to it. And I mean, that's one example among many. I think a question, so the public cannot be here. Do we have folks from representatives of the current facilities professionals that manage our state facilities that are also presenting? Are y'all hearing oral presentations as part of this from the University
From
of
the
Tennessee,
current.
from the Tennessee Board of Regents, from the University of Memphis, from MTSU, from their facilities, to hear what they're doing, if they could see improvements? I mean, it seems it's this odd bifurcation where the only folks who get to offer opinions are large, in many instances, multinational corporations, which there may or may not be real questions about who owns them, what connections they have to certain public officials, etc.
Are you talking about the actual presentation as to why they should be selected as one of the companies that then goes forward as part of the CBD process? Or are you talking about the policy considerations and the needs of the various agencies in higher education.
Sure, I think it's a bit of both, right? Because
But
my
there's
understanding of the
the reason I
collaborative.
asked that question is they're actually very different processes.
Sure.
There's the policy considerations that go into this. There is the need for these agencies in higher education to look at their needs and decide whether or not this is something that they want to do. There is the policy. There is the separate function of procurement, which is where we are right now, and that is we're trying to identify vendors to move forward in this process. That's the whole purpose of the oral presentations. The input of MTSU and UT and other agencies has already, been taken note of. Okay.
Did they
So-
come to y'all and say we want help saving?
They didn't come to me personally, no. But
Did they come to the state government? Said, yeah, we
Yes,
need
of
help.
course.
We need help with our
Do you
facilities.
think we're doing this in a vacuum? We're not doing this in a vacuum. We speak with these people.
Universities, and obviously, like we said, there's 6.5 million taxpayers. Real estate's probably one of our largest expenses, 550 million a year. And so if there's
In this case, it's
opportunities-
people.
It's
It's not
about-
real estate, it's people.
It's
Real estate, it's not real estate, it's community. I've been at MTSU for 20 years, and you're sitting here now saying if this process goes through, I go to work for a contractor, lose my state benefits, and then have to start all over again.
We're not saying that, sir. We're looking into all the benefits. We're working with all the institutions, and I've said it, and I'll say it as many times. You can call me every day if you want an update. You have my number, and I'd be happy to talk to you.
Right?
It's really not about trying to not give you information. It's about trying to give you information as soon as we can, when it's available, and following state law. We're all just trying to move through a very.
Appropriate time, place, and manner of
That's right.
information.
but
And
there-
something was raised about the involvement of the legislature. There are established checks and balances. There is oversight provided by the legislature. There are critical junctures in this process where they get to perform oversight and they can weigh in on the particular thing.
Where's that spelled out, sir?
That's in presentations that are made available that are public on the website. They consist of UT representatives.
So the legislature's role, where's that
They
spelled
have
out?
something,
State
standing committee called
Constitution.
the state constitution and
Yeah.
in Tennessee statute, they have a standing committee called the fiscal review committee.
But that reviews awarded contracts and non-competitive contracts, and so the
That
actual
review-
award
well,
process
no,
of this
that-
would
that
not
is a
go
review
before
that
that, is that
actually-
correct?
They have
That actually
special
is a
hearings
reward.
also.
We can't, our contract is not effective until it has gone through that review process. Now granted, it's not an approval because decisions about contract awards and things like that are executive branch decisions. But that review process that they conduct, they don't have to fund it. They don't have to move, the comptroller doesn't have to approve it, which is a legislative constitutional officer. So
And he has raised questions about
Well,
vested outsourcing
right.
as a model, correct?
there is a
Never been
exactly,
tried
well,
in
there's
public
there's
sector.
tons of oversight with this. I mean, we can't move forward in the process and get to that, the parts of review by fiscal review or comptroller review or anything like that until we get through this process.
So will the fiscal review committee get to review it again next legislative session?
The fiscal review committee, in their wisdom, can look at any contract that we have in our office at any time. They can ask us to show up at the fiscal review committee and present why the contract should get a favorable recommendation.
Could they be present at either the RFQ or the RFP phase of this?
That would be a massive departure from how we do business, and the answer would be no.
But
For the
this,
same reason that you can't be there.
but this is, I mean, just to acknowledge the unprecedented nature, this is already a pretty massive departure, just in terms of scope. And is this the first time that the vested outsourcing process, that the rules changed that were made in January and February? Is this the first time
Well,
it's being
vested
used?
outsourcing, for one thing, has been used throughout the country and in other countries, for that matter. Canada, for example, many times very, very successfully.
In the private sector.
But in
Actually,
Tennessee-
the
No.
federal government, the United States Air Force has used this.
Yep,
process.
United States
Right.
Air Force has used it.
It's a first
Several-
for us in the volunteer state.
At first
Yes.
for us in the volunteer state, that's exactly right. So what we did was a very, very public process where we presented the vested outsourcing to our policy subcommittee, which is open for the most part to agency representatives. And then once it was recommended, it was sent to the advisory council, which is a public meeting. the public meeting that is in fact televised on the internet. You can actually, it's streamed to the internet, so if you even want to go back and look at the advisory council meeting where that was approved, you can.
And that was January of 2016,
right,
correct?
Exactly.
Okay,
so then that goes on to the next layer of review, which is adoption at the procurement commission level, which is also streamed.
And that was February of 2016?
That's exactly right.
Okay.
So
and Mr. Cowles and Mr. Ledger began working on this process in October of 2014?
Right.
Okay.
I don't know. The
November
history.
2014?
The RFI, is that what you're referring
No.
to?
The RFI was August
There
of
was much
2015.
work that went into that before that issue.
Prior to.
Prior to summer of 2015.
Okay.
Yeah.
But these rules changed were January, February of 2016, and Mike Ledger, the expert in vested outsourcing,
Yep.
began working on the processes, issued the RFI for this vested outsourcing project in August of 2015. Okay, I just want to make sure that I have.
Right, you have a chronology. So I mean, when it really comes down to it, it has been a very public process by which we adopted the CBD process. If you look through the entire policy and the procedures that we use for the CBD process, we recognize that it's for a fairly unique procurement, one that's going to consume a great deal of resources. All the agencies, everybody who has any interest in it, the vendor community, the agencies, everybody has had their input. The comptroller had his input on what it should look like and what limitations it should have. It's been a very, very public process.
I think just given its unique nature, one of the things that continues to bring groups of citizens of Tennessee, lifelong Tennesseans, folks who have literally many generations of people who have made this state their home, back to your offices over and over again, is just a real gut level, very Tennessee value that we aren't interested in a king or anything approaching that. And so I think that's what you're hearing, is that reflected into this policy debate, to say we don't want a single man to have the level of power. And we've fought wars in this country literally to ensure that level of public governance. And so given the unique nature, I think that's where the questions about having our representatives, our members of the legislature, who are far more accountable to us on a local level, have real, meaningful, expanded, potentially groundbreaking roles in the oversight and the nitty-gritty of this process, if you will, even if it is a departure, because the process itself for the volunteer state is a pretty drastic departure from what we've known.
Everything that the state is doing this following process is Tennessee state law. We're not doing anything outside that is unique in the sense that is not approved by the law and follows procurement policy.
And I totally understand that. I also, as we talked about with the chronology a moment ago, part of this process is the development of new policy and potentially even new law, right? Changes to existing policy. And so what you're hearing, January and February, there was a change.
Well, just what I'm saying is that there was that change that changed how it added another tool for a toolbox about how we go about to procure very complicated contracts. There will be no changes unless it goes through that process I just described, where it goes to the subcommittee, and then it goes to an advisory council, and then it goes to procurement commission. And there will be no changes other than, our toolbox is set until we go through that process again.
I'm just, we're fellow public service employees. And some of us have devoted our entire careers to it.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Thank you. Some of us are also.
My mother is a retired professor from TSU, and I very much appreciate the concerns, but I want to impress upon you that a lot of these are major policy decisions that are made at your very highest levels by elected officials, people you get to hold accountable, and certain decisions that you fear have not yet been made, because those are laden with major policy considerations.
Exactly.
And I know that your concerns are being taken into account by a lot of people involved in the process. We don't know what decisions will ultimately be made, exactly when they'll be made, but I know your concerns will be taken into account when those decisions are made. We won't be making those decisions.
If I may add, and a lot of this is over my head and stuff, and I appreciate your time, but right now, we're part of the Tennessee family, and if you outsource us, we won't. You know, I have worked for years at UT, a lot of these people worked here. This gentleman and myself are both veterans. We have proven to ourselves to this country, and we have served it honorably and stuff. And right now, we feel like we're part of Tennessee, and I am glad to be in this state, and I want to continue to work for Tennessee. And if there's some other way of saving money, that's what we should be addressing, not selling us out. And that's what it really feels like. It really does feel like we're being sold out so that, you know, you could save a few dollars. I mean, we're part of this family right now.
And I know that, and we appreciate that, and that is a policy discussion that unfortunately is outside of the scope of what I can offer you in terms of comfort or explanation or anything like that.
We can assure you, though, we're not immune or insensitive.
That's right.
We feel a kinship as well, and a great deal of empathy with the concerns.
So I don't understand, so you all were saying, so the people that we elected, so you telling us that the legislative stuff came up to source us out, or did the governor come up with the idea of having us source out?
As far as the decisions,
No,
typically,
not the decision,
right.
to come up with the
Idea.
idea of sourcing, because if Governor Haslam came up with that idea, that's like putting, he's Almighty God, who is he to come up with an idea to hold our lives in his hands?
I can tell you
Tell
what,
us sources
yeah,
out.
I can tell you that typically happens in government. Typically it happens in government. These kind of policy decisions are made by the executive branch. Now, the legislature may decide they don't want to fund it, or, you know, they take away the purse strings and it doesn't happen. But typically, big policy decisions about that, how government's going to operate, that's an executive branch decision. You know, and when I say the executive branch, it's not just the governor, but it's all the administrative agencies under the governor. It's the commissioners, it's the cabinet positions, it's all of the officials that make up the executive branch.
But then the government put out a thing that it's up to the individual, up to the university to source if they want to opt in or out, right?
It is.
Okay, suppose we opt out, our university opts out, do that still mean we have to get sourced out?
No, it's an
option that they would
Right.
weigh out based on the information and see if there is benefits for the citizens in the area that they serve, or whatever audience it is, if it's higher education, for students, for whatever their institution is. And it's their decision, and they take that to their boards, and they would follow their process. It's not the state. The state is simply providing a resourced contract that would give those who have the benefits the opportunity to do that. And so
you know,
that's the
and when
process.
it comes down to it, if there's not a compelling business case to do this
Yeah.
by the individual university is not going to participate. If there is a compelling business case, then they will. You know, it's as simple as that. But that's going to be a decision they have to make. You know, I was really trying to just address kind of more globally how government works and how they
Yeah, but when it all boils down, it all comes together.
Yeah, I understand. And I understand that you guys are going through a lot of uncertainty right now, and you're very, very concerned about what the future holds and all of that. And it's very, you know, it is very troubling. So, you know, right now there's, you know, not much more than we can explain than what we have explained so far.
And that's why we wanted to say as soon as possible that for those who make that decision, these are the options. We want to protect employees. That is a priority. That is first and foremost a guiding principle. And that's a consideration at the highest levels. And, you know, like I said, you have my number. You can call me as much as you want. We will try and get as much information on schedule available and look at opportunities and how we can communicate more. We want to do that to the extent that we have the information that's public to share.
I have a question.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, go ahead.
How do you come up with outsourcing? I mean, what is the rationale behind it?
Rationale behind outsourcing is that you can actually save costs and create efficiencies through outsourcing. Now, it may be there are many contracts that are outsourced. So when I was a metro attorney and we were outsourcing the medical examiner's office, we had a real problem. We were having so much turnover with medical examiners that we found it much more efficient, both from having a consistent medical examiner and also the funding of the office, to outsource it to a private company.
I understand that. So how does that play in the universities and the parks and all of that? How
Well,
do you
all
come
right,
up with
so-
that?
so for
Someone
example-
looked at it.
So
Someone-
for example, the parks and recreation, in many cases, they will outsource a golf course. They don't have core competencies operating golf courses. They can't do the marketing and everything necessary to drive demand towards it. And people want golf courses. So in some cases, they will outsource it and do a management contract, because that's just not what government does very, very well. Let's look at the the Bridgestone Arena. Bridgestone Arena is managed by a private company. And the reason why is Metro government simply doesn't have the kind of people and the kind of resources needed to successfully operate a large venue like that and drive entertainment
Okay,
events.
so
We've got
I
the
can
people.
understand that, but we have already been working.
I
Yes.
understand.
We're already
So-
in place.
So
Yes.
there may be other considerations. So for example, is there a consideration of being able to use economies of scale from other contracts that the vendor has to drive efficiencies and cost savings towards the university? And see, I don't know the answer to that question.
Okay.
That's something that will have to be considered and studied. And when I say business case, there will still have to be a business case for each university who wants to be part of this.
Okay,
Not,
what I'm
not,
saying.
not all services are
I
appropriate
understand
for
that.
outsourcing.
Right.
I'm a
Right,
federal
that's
guy.
correct.
I'm a federal guy, okay?
Yes.
I work for the federal government. Okay, they went into the outsourcing, contracting out. Now, from what I know, if you're gonna go to an outsource situation for state employees, prior to doing that, you gotta do everything possible to save the jobs. Outsourcing is a last resort. It's not something you just come up and walk in with and say, hey, look, it's overspending, we're gonna outsource you. Okay, I work for the federal government. They wanted to outsource the federal government under Bill Clinton. Okay, the entire government. Okay, so they seen what the problem was. Okay, they came up with whatever the cost was, and they gave the agencies the time to get it together and see what the people could do to like circumvent the outsource. Outsourcing, contracting out is the last resort you take, because this is America and you're messing with American jobs. And why would you do that without taking some other actions prior to outsourcing? While I'm here listening to the outsourcing here in Tennessee, I haven't heard anything in our facility to say, hey, look, we may have to streamline, we may have to consolidate, we may have to do some attrition, we may have to do some freezing, we may have to do whatever to save our jobs, we may have to get rid of bad seat employees. We got to do something to save our jobs. I walk in Tennessee, they just come out and say, hey, look, we've been spending too much, we're going to outsource. To me, that is straight stupid. Why are they not under
Yeah,
A76?
there are many considerations to outsourcing, many considerations, and if every outsourcing decision stands on its own, each one is unique to
I
its
understand,
individual
but there's
situation.
a state government. So the federal government has a guideline that you must go by. Tennessee falls under that. So why wouldn't you be under a guideline, the stipulations to protect the American jobs, opposed to just going up with an outsource? I haven't heard our university say anything about, hey, we may have to freeze jobs, we may have to do some early retirements, we may have to cut back, we may have to consolidate some departments. We got a lot of options to save money before we give up the jobs.
It's not always about saving money.
Well, what is it about?
Sometimes it's, I gave you the example of the medical examiner's office. I would say that we really didn't save money in that contract, but what we were doing was we were hoping to create
Get
some
consistency.
efficiencies, but also
Yeah.
get better performance and have more consistency. You know?
Right, okay.
And so every outsourcing decision is different. You have a lot of considerations. It may be money, it may be efficiencies. It may be that doing so you can take advantage of economies of scale. It may be that the quality of services can improve by outsourcing. It just
That's in
depends.
dispute.
Now, your university is going to have to make a business decision at some point. It's going to have to evaluate a number of factors to decide whether to stay status quo or go in the direction of an outsourced contract.
And I think in the case of UT Knoxville, they've done that already, and they decided against it. And this is
But-
coming contrary to that.
Yeah,
There are lots of other institutions of government that do need help. They need additional resources.
They've been defunded. They've been defunded.
I agree with you, but there has not been a historical record of the state properly funding the kind of maintenance that's needed on buildings that are very, very aged. And that covers a broad spectrum beyond higher ed. There's general government properties that need that kind of maintenance, and it requires dollars. What other companies that is their core business do is they can make investments of hundreds of thousands in software and equipment and building systems, and they're motivated because they have companies all over the world, and so they make the employees that come to work for them the very best, and they provide certifications. Maybe you're just doing HVAC, now you can do electrical, and so you're actually more marketable. And so they bring all of that to bear, and when the state is facing challenges with deferred maintenance costs that are very high, you've heard in the billions on existing properties, you're looking at ways to continue to provide the best service possible and nobody lose their job. And so the state is trying to just explore that, and we're not saying that we think that it's the best decision for every single entity. Everybody has very diverse needs, but we are saying that we're just trying to get that option for those that need it.
So I'm just a pastor, and I'm trying to follow the discussion. It's very complicated for me.
It is.
And appreciate your expertise and your intelligence in all of this. But you should pass on at least an impression that my colleagues in East Tennessee and I have shared and talked with these folks and with folks at UT a lot, and hearing their concerns. An impression, at least just to share with you an impression, taking into account all of the experience and history that y'all have, that there's an impression out there that this is high-handed, it's unusual, and it's insensitive to workers in the state. People have that impression of this process. However complicated and however terrific you guys are at your jobs, that impression is out there, and it's not going to be helpful to the executive or to, I think one, maybe deal with you guys very much because you've got good jobs, and so good for you. But it may have some consequences down the way, it seems to me. And people need to understand that that impression is out there and it's strong.
Anytime that I've been I've had a lot of experience with outsourcing because I've been in procurement since 1994. So I've been doing it for a long time. Many outsourcing decisions can have the effect that this is having, and you hope that the messaging is that you assuage concerns, but you can't always do that. Even despite best efforts, it is
Or consequences.
Right, and one of the main things that we attempted to address when we did this was, we know that people are going to be concerned about their jobs. We want to protect Tennessee jobs. We want to protect employee jobs. So if you go to Section A of the solicitation, where it talks about the background of the project and the requirement that any awarded contractor would be taking over state employees, those considerations, I mean, we have attempted to address this in that manner. Now, the messaging of it and whether that messaging is disseminated. One of the most vexing things about being in management and being in charge of a centralized procurement organization is when we make changes, communicating it to the 9,000 procurement users out there. It doesn't always work perfectly. Sometimes the messaging just doesn't get to everybody, and I'm sorry that it seems heavy-handed in that we haven't been very sensitive to the employees. I think that one of the things we did that's rather unprecedented in my experience has been the fact that we addressed on the very front end that anyone awarded the contract is going to have to take state employees.
Qualified and productive state employees.
All right, so if you have somebody who shows up drunk on the job, obviously that's not the kind of person that
they would already be fired. I mean, that
That's
would be
right.
That would be the hope. That would be the
dismissed.
hope. But we all know that there are sometimes employees who probably should have been shown the door, who for whatever reason have not.
So
That's reassuring.
No, but I'm just saying, in every organization, I've been working for 30-something years, and you have really great employees, and sometimes at the very bottom you have guys who are not that great, and they somehow stay on. That happens.
But to your point, that would be managed regardless of whatever the
Right.
state's doing. That would be a management,
I mean, I'm
proper
not-
management.
And to Reverend Sessions' point, I think using this interaction as a learning experience for all of us.
Yes.
Going to those negative examples, I think, touches on that nerve that he's describing, because what I think is the whole unfortunate way that this is played out, Ms. Martin, to your point about the needs of many places outside of campuses to address this, I think that since the economic crisis happened and since the cuts to public higher education were some of the most severe during that period, you had this core of people who've developed a tremendous expertise in saving the state money.
Yep.
In being
Already.
extremely efficient.
That's an asset.
And they have a pride in that.
That's
And
right.
it's been hard earned. And so just to touch on this for one more second, that hard earned pride in that efficiency is just, that's what people are feeling slapped in the face on, because there's this broad brush. They weren't brought to the table to say, oh my goodness, you got cut $300 million and we haven't seen your buildings fall apart. There isn't a story about windows crashing out onto a street and nearly hitting somebody. Like there aren't those examples.
Not on campuses.
And I'm not saying on campus.
Right.
That's what we're talking
Sure.
about.
So I'm acknowledging that the problem exists, but what I'm saying is that you have campus communities that feel like, goodness gracious, we figured something out there. And instead of inviting us to the table to say, y'all are facilities professionals, you are experts, and we value your expertise, and we want to learn from you.
Well, we do.
Sure, and I believe that you do.
Yeah.
But what Reverend Sessions is describing as this feeling, this impression that's out there, that's not the first thing folks heard. The first thing folks heard was there was an RFI put out. The first thing that folks heard was there have been consultants on staff for months and months and months talking about it. The first thing folks heard was, oh my goodness, when we dig a little bit deeper, there's actually a timeline which, had we been on, at this point the contract would be awarded, right? Or we would be entering that phase. August 2016 was the original date for takeover. And so I think that's what's missing. And so again, it would be unprecedented. I understand the point y'all are at in the procurement process and the need to move through that. But I'm also we're here again to continue to communicate that you have this amazing resource of folks like Ed and Jean and Charles and Scott and 10,000 other state employees who are professionals and can tell you something real about this if they're able to do so.
That's right.
And what I would say is that as part of the business analysis of doing an outsourcing versus staying where you are, all of those are considerations. All of those are considerations that will be weighed against everything else. There are a lot of considerations, as I was trying to explain and hope I was able to, is that it's a very complex decision. It's not one that's just say, okay, well, if we just do run a balance sheet, we can show that we can save money. It's not a balance sheet analysis. It's an analysis involving core competencies. Can we improve our competencies by outsourcing? Well, the case you just made is maybe not. So that's a consideration.
And I think also that, how we got to this point with the health of our real estate is really not what's at debate. It's that looking at it today, how can we manage it? Because these are really the taxpayers' buildings. Taxpayers pay for it. It's their buildings. And so we feel it's just in our stewardship responsibility to just look at the best way to manage that as effectively as possible. And like we've said, there's been some experiences where the state did save money over 2 years, and those employees were not doing it the same way as we've talked about. We're protecting all the employees because there is institutional knowledge that you have that a vendor wouldn't have, and that is very valuable. And a vendor can give you far more resources right now than the state can, because the state still got a very large property expense to manage to get our buildings to health and safety and a much better condition. And so we think that there is great value in what you do, and we think that there is great value in your knowledge, and that this process would only make you more valuable, only help the state of Tennessee employees and their buildings get better. And so that's really what this is about, and we're not trying to diminish your concerns in any way. It's very difficult for us to be able to answer all of your questions just at this present time.
We should have found another way to do this. We should. It is better that you have our dedication now, and I'm going to quit, and us be beholden to you and the rest of the state than the state being beholden to
That's
outside
right.
companies.
Who's there to make profit?
You know,
That's
I
what they
mean,
do.
I'm really interested in how much we are of the family right now, and it's better that we are answering to our higher-ups, to this state, than the state is going to answer to some outside company that does a good job for a couple years, then starts putting a lot of important projects on back burners.
These are very, very real, true, and important policy considerations. We are not, we are not in a position to debate that, but you've got to, it's the people you hold accountable who are gonna be involved ultimately, you hold accountable at the polls, who will ultimately make these final policy decisions and considerations.
One final. If, say UT opt out, the chancellor opt out, that, from what I've been reading, that is not, that's just a recommendation. If he opts out, that doesn't mean that we won't be outsourced. Is that true?
Is my understanding, and this is in due consideration of the welfare of the employees. If the University of Tennessee the system decided to opt out, then the only outsourcing would be decided, if it ever happened at all, would have to be a decision of the University of Tennessee.
Yeah,
At the system level, not at the campus
No,
level.
it's at the campus level.
So
And any contract that they would enter into would be managed by the campus, not the state of Tennessee.
It was recently said at a board of trustees meeting that it would go from the chancellor to the president to the board of trustees. So that's a lot more people than the chancellor deciding.
Whatever your process is at a particular institution,
Right.
it would follow that process. It would not be the state making those decisions. Does that answer your question?
No.
So it's ultimately the board of trustees,
Trustees that
chaired by the
okay.
governor,
Yeah.
appointed by the governor.
So it doesn't matter what UT says, basically. It's
That's
I
not,
don't think
sir,
that's accurate.
that's not accurate, and I work in this initiative pretty closely. The level of decision-making, obviously, is to give the option of a contract, and the campuses get to decide if they want to utilize a contract. And of course, there are some that have chosen to wait, and, it's really at their discretion. So thank you, we
Yeah,
appreciate your time.
I had one last comment I wanted to make, and I think we're thankful that you took your time to come and answer a lot of our concerns. I
That's
know
true.
there's a lot of stuff that y'all just can't answer. And I have no doubt that y'all are speaking to your integrity and you're doing everything that you can within your power to go through this process. But the fact of the matter is that the way this looks across the country, outsourcing anywhere, is that although there are certain cases where it might be medical examiners or other types of people who are outsourced, the overwhelming majority of the most people that are outsourced are always the poorest within an institution, the people that are least paid, the people that are least respected. And it's always the largest group of people, right? And if that's the case, then is really outsourcing about saving money, or it's about the easiest way to get across to save that money, or is it really about the business justification?
It's about the business justification.
I know that
Totally is.
If that's the case, though, then we would address all the places that we spend money within an institution. In the first place, we always look at the people that are easiest to pick off, the people that are least paid and least respected within an institution. That's just a fact of the matter. And the response to that being it's about saving money that will go back to the taxpayers. Well, I grew up poor in Tennessee, and I know a lot of people in this state grew up poor in Tennessee. We're a poor state, right? And the people that are poor and work in this state, we receive the least benefit from the savings that we receive from the state of Tennessee.
Right.
And how do we get that savings? How do we see that? And I don't hear that in any of these answers that we're getting.
I can appreciate your comments, and I won't go into a debate on
I don't expect you
sources
to.
of information
Yeah.
and views. I mean, I respect your right to your individual perspective on it. I just would say that, if I could create any kind of analogy, we all have households that we run. I'm CEO of mine, and I'm a single mom, so I look at what I got coming in and what I have going out. And when I have an imbalance, then I need to look at where is my money going out. And so this is just one area where the state is looking at that to see, can we manage our household better? And if we can, great. And that's just a practical decision. But in its simplest terms, obviously, it's not a complete, direct correlation, but that's really what the state's doing. But we're not saying anybody has to do this, we're giving you the options. And then if so, we're also making it possible where state employees that are currently doing these functions are protected, and we have provided that no one could
For a
even
limited time.
have a conversation with the state as a potential vendor if they did not certify that they understood that clearly and agreed to those terms.
Yep.
And so, to the extent that we possibly can, that's what we're trying to do and bring that at the forefront.
I would also add that, given where we are in the process, while I know you're concerned and we're empathetic to your concerns, the reality is we're still very early in the process. I mean, there's a procurement process that has to take place. The universities have to make individual decisions about what to do. There's business cases to be made.
And the state has, just think of the services the state provides. There are hospitals, there are libraries, there are prisons, there are armories. There's just such a diversity. I think there's over 7,500 structures in every county. And so there's just a lot of different needs by different agencies, and some of them really need some assistance in this. So it's really just trying to help with that global look and trying to get them an option.
And there's no doubt that these issues, concerns, policy decisions and discussions will stretch right on into whoever's the next governor. We're starting to get midway through the second term of the Haslam administration, and those may well be major campaign issues and decisions. So again, we're watching, all of us around America are watching a presidential campaign and things go on. Well, there'll be a gubernatorial campaign coming up, and there's lots of other elections, and these are the kinds of valid policy matters and considerations that should be brought to the forefront.
Yeah, and then last, the kind of discussion we're having, honestly, those are policy discussions that are outside of my pay grade to, control, to be honest with you. I can tell you my opinion about things and how I'm seeing things at my level, but the reality is, I certainly can't speak for the policymakers, the people in the universities or the executive branch who are in charge of most of these decisions. I'm handling the procurement.
Yeah.
I'm doing the best job I can with this procurement.
Trust me, we look at the budget books, we understand the salary difference between folks that normally get to make these decisions and those of us in this room.
We are, again, we're fellow public servants.
Mm-hmm.
As the son of a widow who was widowed at 32 with 5 little children, and went back and got her PhD, and he's taught English for over 30 years at TSU. I'm very sensitive to what's happened to tenure of professors.
Yeah.
I mean, we are not insensitive to all of these issues. One of my best friends is a librarian that teaches. So we are not insensitive at all, but these are important major policy decisions that folks ought to be encouraged to bring to debate and discussion.
Well, we're committed to doing so.
Definitely.
We appreciate you
Thank
taking
you.
the time here, and we do hear you, and you have my commitment. Any of you can continue to be in touch, and we'll look at ways that we can improve that as well. We're always open to hearing what the best avenues are. So thank you.
Thank you.